Ladies and gentlemen, post-lunch session, I'm going to introduce you someone who travels to Mumbai, to Shanghai, then to New York. His name is Jefre Outlaw, and is an investment consultant, but specializing more into the immigrations and the visa-related issues that the country is having. He has 2 decades of experience in this profession, and in US he has set up a huge solar plant where he wants to invest, he wants to call upon the Indian investors to put in money there. And this concept is quite impressive because looking at the current problems which we are going through in this power supply, this will be a breakthrough. And we are also having one more presentation thereafter which will be touching on that, on solar energy. So I would like to invite Jefre to the platform over here and his speech on this immigration and the visa-related issues. Thank you for coming all the way from Shanghai to New York to Mumbai then. Thank you very much. Thank you, Talia.
Good afternoon. Glad to be with you here. I live in Shanghai, and honestly, I do not like Chinese food. My favorite food is Indian food. So I come to India once a month under the guise of seeing investors, but I really come for the food. All right, so I want to use this time to talk to you about immigrant investor programs. There are many countries in the world that have immigrant investor programs. I'm familiar with most of them: Canada, the UK, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. But today I want to talk to you specifically about the US program called EB-5. Let me find my buttons here. So what is an EB-5 visa? Some of you may have heard of the EB-5 program. It's an immigrant investor program where you invest money in approved US project, government-approved US project, and it creates jobs. It's proven to create jobs in the country where it's invested, in this case, the United States. In return, you get a permanent green card in that country. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the details here. So the important thing to know about this program is it was started in 1990. I know many people in India, India's not been a big user of this program, have just heard about it, but it's been going on for 25 years. And last year alone, 10,000 people got green cards through this program. Now, the way the program works, the husband, the wife, and all the children under 21 years old who are not married receive a green card. So if it's the husband and wife or 2 or 3 children, that's 4 or 5 green cards. Let's move on here. I'm often asked, can I live anywhere in the United States? And when I get there, what can I do? Well, the answer is you can live in any of the 50 states. And you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. Some people retire, very few. Others go to work. Many start businesses. Of myself, but let's talk about the passport. So only about 25% of green card holders go on to get their passport, but it is an option once you have a permanent green card through the EB-5 program to get full citizenship if you want it. So let's talk about regional centers. So I myself represent a regional center. Regional centers, to get a regional center license, it takes about a year and about $1 million. A lot of due diligence is done by the government on all the owners, what their background is. The projects are structured either as loans or as equity. I would say from what I've seen, about 80% of the projects are structured as loans. They're a lending facility. You're loaning money as a limited partner into the project that is creating jobs. And most of the assets are cross-collateralized, so there's a lot of security to your investment. So this is one of the key parts of the legislation that the government passed, and it's changing. So I want to spend a few minutes on this. The program was designed with $1 million investment. But there were certain rules that said that if you're in a rural area or a targeted employment area where the unemployment is 150% or greater, your investment only had to be $500,000. What I want to mention to you about this is most all the projects are $500,000 projects. However, there's a bill in Congress right now in the US that on October 1st would change this investment amount, because most other countries have upped their investment amount, would change the investment amount to $800,000, and it would change the definition of a targeted employment area. If you're familiar with EB5 at all, you know that there are EB5 projects in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, and in New York and Miami. Well, those don't necessarily have 150% unemployment. But what they're doing is they're drawing a big circle around that city, and there's some in Congress that want to change that. So we're waiting to hear. We'll know by the end of the month whether that's going to change. But for right now, it's $500,000 under this definition. Now, you say, well, what does this cost? And my apologies, I meant to say the $500,000, or I believe now it would be 3.3 or maybe closer to 3.4 crores, depending on the exchange rate. And then there's a management processing fee of $50,000. Now that money is used by the regional center to make sure that all the documents over the 5-year term of this loan are processed. The economic reports and all the things that you need to get your application through USCIS. So who can apply? So the important thing to know is there's no education requirement. There's no language requirement. You need to be healthy. Okay? If you do have a terminal illness, you probably won't get approved. But other than that, there's also no upper age limit. Like I said, you have to be 21 to be the head of household to make the investment, and then your children have to be under 21. Marital status, single, married, divorced, separated, doesn't matter. If you are married or separated at the time, the husband and the wife can take the green card. When you file, you can be single. When you're approved, you can be married and file an amendment. So let's talk about the time frame so that you'll have an understanding of how long this takes. And I know there are some programs in the world that are faster than this. I know, because I hear about it all the time. But the first thing you'd do is you would make sure that the program's right for you. You would choose a regional center and a project. Your application, which is called an I-526, would be prepared by your immigration attorney, someone that you would pick. And that's important that you make that decision. Commit the funds to the project. Then in about 9 to 14 months, the U.S. government's going to come back and say, we agree, this project looks good, we're going to give you a provisional green card. So let me talk to you about what that looks like. So investor and family receive 2-year conditional green cards. So remember I said that jobs had to be created? Well, for each investor, 10 full-time jobs have to be created over a 2-year period. Well, that's what this rule is for. So when you get your green card, your first one, it's going to have a 2-year expiration date on it. And about 18 months into the program, the regional center is going to provide paperwork to the government and say, here are all the jobs were created. And then they're going to remove that 2-year restriction, and it'll become a permanent green card. And when I say permanent, It's just like my passport. It has to be renewed every 10 years, but there's no questions asked. So India, why are companies like mine in India these days? Well, there's the numbers. 43,000 millionaires migrated in the last 10 years. So India is already the number 7 user of this program. Last year, about 100 Indian nationals went through and got their green card through EB-5. We expect that that number will have tripled this year. And we believe that at the current growth rate, that in 5 years, India will surpass China in this program. Currently, right now, China is taking 85% of the 10,000 a year allocated by the US government. So, again, I didn't want this to be a sales pitch. I wanted to talk to you about if you or friends or family are contemplating this kind of program, what questions to ask to anybody doing this. So, of course, you're going to want to do your due diligence about the project developer and the team. What about previous projects? What has their history been? Ask a lot of questions about the regional center, the owner and operator. You know, there's been very few cases of fraud, but there have been a few. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, has stepped in, put some people in jail, and returned money to investors out of escrow. It's highly, highly regulated, like banking. But there is some risk, so you need to do your research. The economic analysis, who did it? Was it one of the government-approved economists? And how many jobs are going to be created? You want to make sure that there's a minimum of a 30% cushion in job creation. And then another critical question, in a lot of real estate projects, there's a lot of senior debt. So know that the bank owns the project. So look at that carefully when you analyze the capital stack, so that you know how protected you are on the collateral should something go wrong. Has the project received any tax incentives? And if so, how much and for how long? So how much equity has the developer put in? How much skin in the game do they have? You know, is it just a small amount? If it is, I'd be cautious. They should be as at risk as the EB-5 investors are. Does the project have pre-approval by the government? This takes a year. Most projects don't. In fact, less than 10% of projects do have pre-approval. And then what is the exit strategy? How are you going to get your money back at the end of the 5-year loan term? So let's talk a little bit about the demographics of who uses this program, because you may be interested to know. So the average net worth of an EB-5 investor has been calculated by the association to be $8 million US. So it's what economists call the upper middle class. It's not the super wealthy. It's not big mining magnates or manufacturing owners. Sometimes they do gift their children the money, which is legal and allowable, and their children do the immigration. The age tends to be 30 to 50 years old. Young, in my opinion. And they tend to have children under 10 years old who they want to put in high school in the US. So the last couple of slides here, I want to briefly talk about our project, which Satya mentioned, which is, in my opinion, a project near and dear to my heart because it's part of saving the planet. I used to do real estate projects for years, and when I found this project, I quickly switched over to alternative energy. And I think many people here in India understand the reason for this, why solar is growing so fast and why it's so needed. So 6 years ago, the firm I'm with went into solar. We were fortunate to buy up patents in China, Germany, and the US. and developed some amazing high-efficiency panels made with our equipment that were very durable. So durable that we put 25-year warranties on them. Think about that. We've done so well with this in the past, we had a bunch of cash. So we put $33 million into this $55 million factory. And by the way, the factory started operating this month. The factory has $22.5 million in EB5 money. We've raised over half of that already to date. Factory has no debt. The EB5 investors have first lien rights. They own separately the real estate, the buildings, or I should say the land, the buildings, the equipment, the patents, the work in process, and the raw materials. In our particular project, the government is crediting us with 1,331 jobs. They've approved that. They've pre-approved it. So it's guaranteed. And we only need 450 because we only have 45 investors. Factory's already operating, as I said before. Most investors come and tour it. And the factory's holding 7 years of signed purchase orders on hand. So think about that. I'm running this factory now 7 days a week, 3 shifts a day, and I'm sitting on 7 years of orders. So I'm going to have to build another factory after I finish this raise. And we just have room for 20 more investor partners. So this is just a plug that we do have exemplar approval, pre-approval, and now's the time to act. It does take 20 months to get a green card, so we ask our investors to think in advance about it. And here's contact information. So I'll take questions. Good question. I didn't put that on there in particular. The ROI for most projects in the EB5 space is anywhere from 0.5 point a year to 4 points a year. And the reason it is people don't do this for return on investment. They do it for the green card, right? They get a green card in 20 months instead of 15 years to process a standard green card. In our particular project, ours is a range. We're doing so well, we expect we'll come in at the top of the range, is 2 to 4%. It'll be a minimum of 2% a year or 10% for the 5 years, and it could be as high as 20. And currently we're a $150 million a year business, and our margins, I said we just started the factory this month, but our margins are between 30 and 40%. Right now they're in the low 30s right now, but once we get up to full capacity, it'll be closer to 40%. Any other questions? Yes, sir. I'm sorry? The processing time as far as getting the card?
Yeah, because there might be some people who are interested to go a little faster. Because
Yeah.
I also planning to start this kind of business here.
Okay. Yeah.
Canadian point of view.
Yeah. And I would love to tell you that there is, but here's the challenge. If you go to the USCIS website and you search, you'll see that the average processing time for a green card is 13.4 months. And there's nothing I can do about it. It's the US government. We've asked them to. I've been in the business for over 2 years, and they keep telling me the time's going to get shorter, and each year another month gets added. In 2013, it was 12 months. In 2014, it was 13 months. Now we're almost to 14 months. So I would love to tell you that it's faster, but unfortunately they've talked about people paying more and being in a fast track, especially since there's so many people that own SMEs that want to get in business in the US, which would be good for the US economy, but unfortunately no.
Secondly, these funds, are they going to be locked in, or is it possible for the investor to use it some way? Totally locked in for it's an investment kind of one way?
Well, you're locked into the investment. So when you sign your private placement memorandum, it's for a 5-year term from the time that you make your investment. So your money is going to be parked in that facility because it has to be there. Here's the reason that the time frame works that way. Remember, it takes 14 months to get your green card. And then you have to show 2 years after the 14 months that you've created 10 jobs. So that takes you to 3 years. And then we're going to liquidate in year 4 to 5 and pay you at the 5-year mark. So, yes. Now, we have had situations where an investor makes their investment, then for some reason their application is rejected, then the next investor that comes in, we then pay them their money back so they can be made whole, and the new investor goes into the project. But that's very, very rare. It happens 90% of the applications that go in get approved. 7% get abandoned, meaning in that 5 years something happens, there's a death in the family, there's a divorce, there's something that happens that they decide they don't want to take the immigration. So that's 7%. There's actually only 3% that get rejected, and it's usually because of source of funds problems.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll be here after the presentation in case you have any individual questions.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for a good presentations over here. I think you've enlightened on visa, immigrations, and the critical factors, the hidden factors what are there, and people got enlightened about it. And do you think the future prospect is very high, looking at a lot of clumsy processes we have in the diplomatic level?
From the U.S. side or from the India side?
No, from the U.S. side.
From the U.S. side, I think there's both the Democrats and the Republicans want to keep this program in place because it helps create jobs in the U.S. and there are people that want to move there and start businesses or have access to education. So I think that they will come up with
So why do you detain Shah Rukh Khan and other people when they have the Muslim name attached in the airport actually?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Why do you detain, you know the film star Shah Rukh Khan? The superstar. He's a superstar in India.
Okay.
And when he goes to the Kennedy airport and everywhere, then he gets detained. They don't know he's a superstar.
Okay.
And we lately had cases where our diplomatic channels were blocked and a lot of things are happening. Do you have anything grudge against us then?
No, unfortunately
Nothing.
not.
Yes. Okay. We are very keen to do business with you. Similarly, we expect the same thing to come from you.
Yes.
So I will hope that, yes, please.
Quick question about Bernie. How is he disposed about your idea of outsourcing?
If Bernie comes to power, what do you expect? Any changes in your policies about foreign investment?
If who comes to power?
Bernie, your presidential candidate.
You mean
One of the presidential candidate is there. He's like Arvind Kejriwal. there.
Bernie? Yeah. Okay, Bernie. Yeah. That's a good question. Right now, Trump's the leader, and he scares me more than Bernie does. You know, I think the fortunate thing about Bernie is Bernie isn't as anti-immigration. He's got a softer approach, and I think he would actually be good for business. I really do.
Including outsourcing?
You know, the thing is right now the trend over the last 10 years is a lot of outsourcing has been reversed, but it's interesting because this past year, because the Import-Export Bank was not reinitialized, now we're seeing outsourcing pick up speed again. So what you have to remember is, and I think you may have the same problem with the Prime Minister, is you can have a president that has great ideas and then they'll spend 4 or 8 years and never get anything done.
I asked this question, because one of my previous boss is here, sitting right in front of me. So he's one of our leading company in India who's doing outsourcing of US. So he'll be presenting to it.
Yes,
Mr. Lalit Modi.
He's asking, do you know Narendra Modi?
No. No,
You don't know Narendra Modi? Yes. Narendra Modi.
Oh, yes, the Prime Minister.
Yes, the Prime
I know
Minister.
him.
Yeah. The rock star.